Hey guys, is that one on? Hey, can you guys hear me? Okay, I'm on. Thanks for coming. And as just announced, my name is Olivier. There's an I in between the V and the E. That's a French version for Oliver. You can call me Oliver if you want. I'm a program manager at Microsoft, and I look after all the developer SDKs for Azure IoT. People know what IoT is about? Come on. Okay. So everyone has his own interpretation, definition, whatever. I'm not going to go through that. I'm going to save you the slide with this reading. Hey, it's going to be like 26 billion devices by 2020. You all know that. What I wanted to do during this 45 minutes is to give you a glance of what we have at Microsoft when it comes to IoT on the service side of things, and how that applies to devices and mobile devices as well. What I would like as well is that at the end of the session, you eventually have tons of questions for me, and I have questions for you as well in terms of where you, as mobile developers, think we should go when it comes to SDKs for Azure IoT services. That make sense? So you have my Twitter account here, same thing for my email address, bloch@microsoft.com. Something doesn't work on Azure SDK, on Azure IoT SDKs, ping me, blame me, happy to help. While I will not go through the famous slides with like that many billion devices, what I want to do in the first few slides here is kind of explain what we think is the problem with IoT and how Azure is trying to offer solutions for that. And the first thing I want to talk about real quick is the fact that we see a market where people are trying to connect anything to the cloud. We're talking connected buildings, we're talking connected cars, connected fridges, you name it. And actually, we're talking about really anything, from industrial automation to consumer devices and so forth. So that's the first problem that we're looking at from the IoT perspective and from the devices to be connected to the cloud's perspective. How do we actually address these various types of devices, form factors, and so forth? And actually, we also have some weird devices, and I like to have a small list of things you cannot imagine exist out there. You all heard, I guess, about the idea of controlling your coffee machine using your phone. Now you can also have connected bottles. I'm not sure exactly why, but you can do that. You can order your products directly from your machines using the Amazon button. And you guess what that is? That is a smart pillow. It will actually tell you when to turn around not to get sunburned. Chopsticks, smart chopsticks that actually are connected and are able to analyze the food you're eating. So before putting it in your mouth, wait a couple seconds, get the notification, you can eat that. And then you can eat. The smart barbecue, smart grill, right? So you can know exactly when your meat is cooked. And the connected cow, you heard about that? So these are some examples of these anythings, right? Connecting any type of things, gathering data up to the cloud, analyze that, and eventually control the devices from the cloud. That also means everythings. And when I mean everythings, I mean old devices and new devices. Customers, they want to cloudify or connect existing hardware, existing devices. If you're a vending machine operator, you don't want to redeploy vending machines. You want to make sure that you can enhance or modify the existing machines for them to connect, right? So you need to be able to kind of upgrade your existing stuff. And obviously, we as a service also need to support new stuff, new development languages, new platforms in the IoT space, and so forth. And when I say platforms, I actually include everything from tiny microcontrollers all the way up to big gateways running full OS eventually in the cloud. So that's another big challenge. How do you address tiny, tiny things the same way you would address the big ones? And you have various scenarios. Is the device directly connected? Is it going through a gateway? Should that gateway actually declare all the sensor devices as unique devices? Should it aggregate everything? Should you have some smarts down on the gateway or everything in the cloud? All these questions enter into play. The other one is, everyone these days is running for a cloud for IoT. I want to be a cloud for IoT solution. I want the customers doing IoT and connecting these 26 billion devices to come to my cloud and my platform. And as I'm Azure, I have to say, I do want customers to come to my platform. But these platforms are coming into life these days. Like every day there's a new cloud offer for IoT. And so it's something we think is really important from our perspective is to address this cloud-to-cloud mechanism. If a cloud IoT offer is really good at something, like, for example, doing device management, and customers are adopting that, but they cannot scale for doing smart analytics and machine learning because that cloud solution doesn't scale, then how about connecting both of these cloud solutions together and offer customers something that they really need? So this is the other part of the problem. After any type of devices, we have all these type of devices we need to cover. And all these devices, actually, they talk different languages. So we need to consider how do we address that, talking C, that, talking C#, this one, Node, or whatnot. So as a company, we need to be careful about that and not just look at the big market and say, oh, like all the devices in the IoT space are running C or 90%, so I'm just going to do C. We cannot do that. We really have to look at the trends and understand all the languages that are used out there and understand what kind of audience we're talking to and so forth. The other thing is, and it's kind of big these days in the communication discussions around IoT, is the communication protocols. There are standards out there. People are betting on some. People are betting on other ones. Is it MQTT is going to win? Is it HTTP REST? Is it HTTP2? Is it AMQP? Is it CoAP? We need to look at the market and make sure that the options are available, and eventually we're not down to a single of them. That wouldn't be a nice IoT presentation without security. And these are the things we're trying to address on the Azure IoT side of things. Privacy, access control, authentication, encryption. I'm not going to dive into details here. You have a rough idea. We need to make sure devices are connected in a safe way, that the data goes from device to cloud and cloud to device in a secure way, prevents the attack, like man-in-the-middle attacks and all these kind of things. All of that kept in mind. Also the fact that we're talking about tiny devices very often. So how do these tiny devices support encryption, support security, and so forth is a tough question. And we are trying to address these questions. So here is what we offer at Microsoft for Azure IoT services. So first of all, you might know that anyone who's been working with Azure in general, storage, or something else? Good portion of you. So we have anyone working with AWS services? The other half, nice. So basically, same thing. Bunch of services for you to aggregate each of these services. They're specialized into doing something, right? Storing data in a certain way, doing real-time analytics, doing big data storage things, and so forth. So we have all of these. You can connect external services. The one service I want to focus on and talk about later in that presentation is Azure IoT Hub, which is, as its name indicates, which is the cloud gateway for devices. Devices will authenticate and connect and send data and receive commands from Azure IoT Hub. And you'll see how, you can benefit from these SDKs that I'm going to show you. So you have that notion of box of Legos, right? Bunch of services, I'm going to aggregate them and build an IoT solution. But we know it's not easy, so we are also offering something we call the Azure IoT Suite. So the suite is a bundle of services, and it's actually presented in the form of what we call the pre-configured solutions, where you have a choice between today two, but we're going to extend the options, two solutions. Today there's remote monitoring and predictive maintenance. We're bringing asset management soon. These are kind of the generic patterns that we're seeing in the market today, especially in the industrial automation market that we targeted first. And you'll see in a minute how easy it is using one of these pre-configured solutions to have something up and running in a few minutes that allows you to do all from connecting a device to doing smart analytics, presenting data in a dashboard, and taking action on the data. And these suites, you really need to think about them as a boilerplate for you to build your own IoT solutions. Right? This is not a SaaS offering. This is still a platform as a service offering. The idea is to pre-aggregate, pre-configure a set of services for you, because that's definitely not easy. Because that's what it looks like once it's all put together. Right? So you have various types of services, and this is just an example of one of these pre-configured solutions. So you have the devices on one side. You have Azure IoT Hub that ingests data from the services. You have services like Stream Analytics that are able to do real-time analytics on data. I get data from an input. I do some sorting on it. I filter. I compute averages, maxes, whatever in a SQL format, SQL query format. And then I push it somewhere. In the case of our remote monitoring solution, we push to a blob storage to actually have the real data to be consumed by some web dashboard. And then we also push to what we call Event Hub. Event Hub is a very high throughput service, allows you to take data and boom, send it somewhere else with a buffer that you can control. And then we have web jobs that will do some work on these data coming from that Event Hub, show that on a dashboard in the web using Power BI controls. We have DocDB in the back in order to add metadata on top of the devices and do some sort of device management. And then eventually you can use logic apps to trigger actions in another application, another solution. Think CRMs, think these kind of things, right? You want to trigger on a maintenance ticket creation somewhere. You can do that using logic apps. All of that secured using Azure Active Directory. So this is the big, huge, everything Microsoft solution, and this is an example of how to do that. If you're used to working with some open source solutions that are out there to do IoT, like look at all the Apache Storm and all the other projects that are out there, you can run them there and take and replace. If you want to replace Stream Analytics with Storm, no problem. Just take it out, replace with Storm. If you want to use your own, big data solution, Hadoop whatnot, like you can do that. Or Azure actually supports all these services as well. This is definitely, once again, an example of a solution for you to get started with. So this is kind of a, hey, what does it mean? How do I get started? And this is exactly what we're going to talk about. So you can start from one of these pre-configured solutions, and you'll see it's easy. But you can also do your own thing, right? Aggregate these things on your own. The recommendation that I would give you is to start from one of these starting points here. The first one is look at our Azure IoT Starter Kits. We just released and built a series of kits, hardware kits, simple kits, things that makers would use, and sometimes industrial automation manufacturers. The idea of these kits is to get you started in about 20 minutes, having a device talking to an IoT Suite remote monitoring solution, so the pre-deployed one, or do it yourself, as in like create my own set of services that do something very simple to analyze data from a real device and take action. So these starter kits are definitely a great starting point for you. The second one is a set of samples. We have end-to-end samples that we're publishing. This is all open source. If you are building your own IoT solution using Azure IoT, please feel free to submit a new sample. I'll be more than happy to integrate that into our repositories. So you can look at the ak.ms Azure IoT samples link. There's plenty of things here. And there's something else you're going to see soon as well. We have also a bunch of certified platforms. We have something like 75 of them, just hardware platforms that have been certified to run with Azure IoT, which also are a very good starting point for you. I'll share the slides after, through the Evolve site and app, so you'll be able to get all these links. You can also start from scratch, right? If you're one of these guys, don't want to use a sample, don't want to use a starter kit, don't want to use a pre-configured solution, knock yourself out. Go to the portal for Azure, create a new IoT Hub. You'll see in a second how to do that. You can use ARM templates, which are the Azure Resource Manager templates. It allows you to deploy a set of services with a few command lines. And you can visit our Azure IoT SDKs for resources, right? As in actual SDKs and a bunch of samples and so on. So when it comes to the SDKs and tools, and this is where it becomes interesting for you developers, what do we have in stock? So first, when you build an IoT solution, it's not just about connecting a device and ingesting data. It's about all the rest also, right? So storing the data, doing the analytics, and so on. So we have a bunch of Azure SDKs for that. Most of them are, all of them support C# for sure. I can bet that. Most of them support Java. Lots support Python. So, well, you're a C#, so you care about C#, but we do have a bunch of other options. Lots of Node as well. When it comes to Azure IoT Hub, which is that part I'm going to focus on today, we have two types of SDKs, all open source on GitHub. And these ones are on one side to connect data from devices into Azure, and that's what I call a device client SDKs. So we have C, JavaScript, Java, C#, Python today, extending the support based on customer demands and asks. The one I want to show you today is C#. Since build, we have a PCL library that allows you to use our stuff on top of Xamarin. You're kind of lucky. I've been asked like a week ago, hey, can we have an Azure IoT presentation like Xamarin Involved? I'm like, yeah, sure. Can I talk about everything? Yeah, it's better if you talk about C# Xamarin support. It's like, just 1 week old. I'm curious to see how that's going to go. So you'll see what we have in stock. I'm sure you guys will have plenty of opinions on what to do, what not to do, how to change things, and so forth. Once again, open source libraries. Send an issue, send me an email if you have an idea after that presentation about how things should go on our side. I'm like wide open and really want to get your input. The second type of SDK, which is the one that actually I think you might be as much interested as the first one. So having a Xamarin device become a IoT device, basically contributing its sensors data into an IoT solution is one thing. The other thing I'm thinking that you might be interested in is actually managing the IoT solution from a dashboard on a mobile device or tablet, right? So basically being able to look at all the devices that are connected, have a look at the data they're sending commands back to the device, enabling, disabling a device, and things like that. So I'm thinking that you might be as well interested in that area as much as in having a Xamarin device sending data to IoT Hub. The bad news is that we don't yet have the PCL library for that kind of SDK. We do have a C# library, but we have not done the work of making sure it runs at a PCL or within Xamarin. So if you guys give it a try and you make it work, let us know. You might be faster than us. We definitely are planning to have a PCL version of that C# service client SDK real soon. And if you tell me it's useless, we won't do it. But I guess you will not say that. When it comes to devices, we do have all these SDKs open source, but you might not want to have to recompile everything. If you're a C developer, that's something that might be a bit painful. So what we're trying to do is actually provide packages, right? NuGet packages in particular, for you to not have to clone the full repo of the SDKs, compile that, get the binary or whatever, and then use it in your project. So in that case, NuGet, you'll see how it's used, pretty straightforward. Add the NuGet package, using statement, off you go, a few APIs, and you can have a device talking to IoT Hub. That's definitely something very important in the way we're developing our SDKs. The pre-configured solutions, back to the notion of IoT Suite, pre-configured bundle of services. All these are open source at all levels. The configuration of the ARM template to deploy everything, the website dashboard, the various code that runs in the services, the queries for the stream analytics jobs and things like that, everything is open source as well for you to look into, for you to customize for building your own IoT solution. Last but not least, a couple of tools. That's an area that actually you might also be interested. When you're developing for IoT, especially if you're a device developer, there's one thing you want to test is, hey, is my device talking to my cloud? And then if you are developing the cloud solution, you want to say, hey, does my cloud solution work when I test with this kind of devices and I want to simulate the devices and so forth? So we want to have tools that allows you to do both things, like simulate devices for testing cloud services, but also having tools that monitor what's going on devices, validate that your code on the device is running well. So we have two tools today. One which is a cross-platform tool based on Node, which is called IoT Hub Explorer. Another one which today is a C# application running only on Windows. Call for action, guys, if you want to help us having that running as a as Xamarin app on other things than just Windows. I'm more than open to that, actually willing to make that happen. I think I'm going to hack on that tomorrow around here. So that's called Device Explorer. So you'll see the pure .NET version running on my machine today, but you can definitely imagine that becoming real soon Xamarin application. With or without your help, we'll make it happen. I would love for that to be something that we work on together as, Xamarin community and our team focusing more on the services and that. With that, I want to show you some demos. And so the first thing I want to show you real quick is Azure IoT Suite, sorry. And to do that, I'm going to go to the Azure IoT Suite portal. So that's AzureIoTSuite.com. Sorry. This is the landing page for all your IoT Suite solutions. You'll see a bunch in there. I'm logged in with my Microsoft account. You'll see a bunch of solutions from my colleague doing demos, doing actual work. I hope there's no specific name that will actually lead you to think we're doing something stupid. So that's good. Nothing magic in there. The way you're going to create a new IoT Suite solution is as simple as, well, first you have to have an Azure account, right? If you don't have an Azure account, you can create a trial subscription and try all of that as well for free. But then you need to have an Azure account. You go to AzureIoTSuite.com, you log in, and then you hit Create a New Solution. And in there, you have these two options that I was talking about, remote monitoring and predictive maintenance. I don't know if I can, no. OK, I'm going to select remote monitoring in that case. And what it's going to do is going to ask me for a name. It's going to ask me for a region. So our services are available in all these regions today, right? And we're extending. Yeah, so we have basically most of them are here today. That means that actually when you're deploying your solution, you have to care about redundancy and so on. We take care of that for you. And then you pick a subscription. If you're like me, you have several. And here you have the list of the services that will be deployed. I want you to keep in mind something if you do start playing with Azure IoT Suite, especially if it's for your own maker home project. Beware, this is spinning up pretty much high-end type of services, because this is aiming at industrial automation customers who are actually willing to test things at scale, right? And so we have a way of billing for the services based on tiers, and each of these tiers have specific limitations. So here you see Azure IoT Hub, which is the data ingestion. So we're doing the high-frequency unit, which might cost you money, right, on a monthly base if you deploy that. We have a free tier, so if you're doing your own home project, use the free tier. Like, go back in there, change the tiering and so on your settings. So if you do IoT Suite, be careful of that. This is going to cost you money after some time. The good thing is that if you try out with a trial subscription, you have a budget. I don't remember. I think it's $100 that you can run through in terms of consumption before you can't do anything else and have to buy. So that's something that gives you a chance to try out. If you do the do-it-yourself solution following the samples, you can go with pretty much everything free and have your own home project for opening your garage door or things like that for free. And then I would hit Create Solution. It takes about 7-10 minutes to deploy everything. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to actually open an existing solution. Let me go back to my home. And I'm going to start my solution, which is called Olivier Remote Monitoring. So it's using Active Directory to log into Managed Security. So I just logged in. And here you have the basic dashboard for remote monitoring. And I don't want to go into too many details, but at a high level, it gives you, a telemetry history. You see actual real-time data from devices. You see the geolocation of a device. You can list the devices that are registered into my suite solution. You can set rules in order to have things triggered when something happens on the data, like temperature data goes above a certain threshold, and I want to do something after that, and so forth. So that gives you an idea of what is there by default. And if you are, for example, once again to my example of the vending machine guy, you can totally think of that being your starting point for your project. You do have the visibility on all the devices. Let me actually bring them up. So all these devices, you can have a bunch of metadata information about these devices, about their state and so on. You can actually see the real-time data on the dashboard layer for the temperature, which is the expected temperature, the actual temperature, the external temperature. And then you can actually make your decisions of like, hey, that one has a problem with temperature. It is actually going up. It shouldn't. Let me trigger an action in my line of business application, create a ticket automatically, and so on. You can do that from here. So you don't see any data coming up here. And the reason why is because the sample device that I have here is shut down because I don't want it to spend money. So, but let's actually start an actual device. I have a UWP app. I didn't have time this morning to port to Xamarin. My bad. But you should be pretty familiar with the way things are going. So let me actually project my phone screen. And what I would like is actually for that to be here. Allow that. And start the app. So this is a very simple app. Allows me to connect the device securely. So once again, it was secure. I was talking about security. Here I have a device. I've been adding a new device. It has its own connection information with a device name and an authentication key. So these have been generated by the suite and by IoT Hub in particular. And I'll be able to then connect my device, connect the guy. And once it's connected, start sending data. And here, I'm going to switch to this guy. And I'm going to start seeing my real data coming from my real device, which are basically sliders here. There's a little latency. So here we go. We have that. It's running. It's sending data. Pretty straightforward in terms of using what you're just saying. The code for the UWP app is a sample, which is on GitHub. So you can look at that. But what we're going to do right now is actually look closer into the service IoT Hub, which is behind this IoT Suite solution, and how to build code using Xamarin for connecting an actual device to IoT Hub. So this gives you the final point I want to go to, right? So this is, imagine this is your solution. I want to do that. Let me actually deconstruct that a little and show you how to do that at a lower level. So I'm going to go to the portal, to the Azure portal. And what I'm going to do is show you how to create a new Azure IoT Hub instance. On the portal to the left, you have this big plus button. I'm going to add a service. As soon as the portal is live, yes, plus. And in there, I can look for, in Internet of Things, the service called Azure IoT Hub. If I go too fast, you have questions, just interrupt me. And this is something I'm going to call Evolve Demo. And I was talking about tiers. So you have to select at this point which tier you want to use. And you start seeing like the limits that you have on each of them. So here we have the free tier. I cannot use that anymore because you can have only one per subscription. It will allow me to send 8,000 messages per day. Just decent, right? If you like break it down to a number of messages per second, I will not do the math. But you can imagine how many messages you can send for the free tier. And for most of the home projects or not, it's plenty enough. Otherwise, you have the other ones, which are the S1 or S2. And basically, these ones look at things like 400K messages per unit and per day, and other ones like 6 million for the other one. You can definitely then scale, have several units into a single IoT Hub instance, and go to billions of devices real fast. We still have to see who wants to do that with billions. Anyways, so I have my new name for my IoT Hub. I select the number of units, just one. I have a number of partitions. So the partition is a notion for when you read out of the IoT Hub. This is not something I'm going to drill in today because we want to make it simple for you. I'm going to pick a resource group, or in that case, actually create a new one. So resource groups is a way in Azure to gather a set of services together, so you can manage them, delete them, see them at once, versus having to go through the portal if you're like me and have tons of services. So let me call that Evolve Demo. I'm creating that subscription, and I hit Create. It's going to take a minute or two to create that. But you get the idea. This is the way you create a new IoT Hub. The next thing you're going to have to do, I'm switching to one already deployed. I don't know how much time it's going to take. Usually it's 1 or 2 minutes, but it can take more. I have an IoT Hub that's been deployed there. And what I can see from here is it's the actual consumption. I can also see the list of devices that have been created. So we have this notion of a device registry for IoT Hub. Allows you to create new device identities and key pairs. And this is exactly what the device registry is about. Then you have this huge list of things that can go to millions of devices, and now you know that devices are allowed to connect. And the next thing you need to do is actually grab these key value pairs in order to provision your device for it to connect to IoT Hub. So here what I'm going to do is actually go and check out the connection string for my IoT Hub. So this is the one that allows me to manage the IoT Hub. I'm copying that connection string. And I'm going to start this little tool that we call Device Explorer. So this is the one I need your help, guys, to change into something more decent using Xamarin and Forms and run on a mobile device rather than just plain Windows. I'm actually connecting that tool to IoT Hub instance. And from that tool, I'm able to do a bunch of things, including listing the existing devices that have been created. I can create a new one. I'm going to call that evolve, whatever. It doesn't matter. And I can just add this device identity into my collection of devices. Here it is. And what I'm going to do is copy that connection string for later. And then I will be able to monitor the data and so forth. But for the sake of time, because time is just flying, I'm going to start Visual Studio now. And what I want to do is show you real quick how to create a Xamarin app that talks to IoT Hub using our SDK and the PCL library that I mentioned earlier. I just realized that. OK, I'll be here. Bye. So let me hit New Project. Obviously, you can do that from Xamarin Studio if you prefer. I'm going to start, I don't care, native. I didn't have time to play with the forms. Just got the book yesterday, like you. And I've not studied enough so that you have a forms demo. For the sake of today's demo, I don't think it's a big deal. These are just the basics. Once again, I'm going to be publishing all of that on GitHub. So you can definitely just count on the fact that you can just reuse that code. And the next thing, obviously, is to go to NuGet and search for something called, I'm going to need to connect this guy as well. If I want to run Xamarin iOS. Yep, is it on? Hello? Someone find a way to get it faster here? Yeah, there you go. So I'm going to look for Microsoft.Azure.devices.client.pcl. Right? So that library here we've been pushing onto NuGet will allow you to get all the simple APIs for you to connect the device to IoT Hub, send messages, receive messages. 3 APIs. I think it should be fine. We really want to make it super simple on the device development side of things. So I'm actually installing all these guys here. The screen is so little. And what I can do immediately is start working on the portable class here. I'm going to add the using statement. Yes, accept. Trying to make up for the time. OK, Azure. Still working in the background. Devices, client, I think I'm all right here. And then the next action is basically to add a device client object, which will be your device, the IoT Hub device thingy. And in my portable class, what I'm going to do is actually initialize that by creating that client. And the client, what it needs is basically a connection string that I had before. So let me do that, connection string. That's going to be my constructor. You'll see why in a second. And that's pretty much it. So here, I have created an instance of my device client on the device. And what I want to add is a function to add, to send a message. So this is how the function looks like. I'm creating a new message. And I'm needing these guys here. And then I do a send event async for sending that message. So again, pretty straightforward. I need to add the using statements for these guys. Another thing I'm going to add is a way to listen for messages back from IoT Hub. Let's see how that works. And in there, I'm going to add this code here. So I'm creating a task. We're doing that in a pooling mode, which is not good. And the reason why we're doing that is because we've not implemented protocols like AMQP or MQTT on the PCL library yet that will allow to have a bidirectional connection with the device. So today it's HTTP, so you have to pool for getting a message from the cloud on the device. And once again here, I'm doing that little encoding thing. And I should be good to go. Oops, sorry, this is not what I wanted. I wanted to build that class. So you see, very simple. I create an instance of that device client object. I then have a function for sending, and I have a function for receiving. Pretty straightforward. Let me go into my Android code and into the main activity here. So as you might imagine, what I'm going to do is basically create an instance of my class. And I'm going to do that here. Boom, like that. And I have to add the connection string. And if it's still in my, yes, still there. So here I have a connection string that is actually basically the way I provision my device for it to know where it's going to connect to and what are its credentials. So provisioning manually, you might ask, like, hey, it's not super secure, it's hard-coded, not good. So we have ways to do that in a better way, and I'm not showing that today because we don't have time. So the next thing I want to do here is obviously, so this thing is initialized, so I guess I don't have much to do. It's just like sending a message, right? So let me do that here, code snippet, and I'm going to call the send message. And this is the one function, send message. And in there, I'm going to say message number blah, right, from device, which is, let's say, Droid. That's the Droid application. If I'm good, I should have everything in there. And I want to pick this guy here to start the Android simulator. I'm using the Xamarin Player, which I kind of like when it works. And I will be deploying that application, like very simple, just using the default, Hello World button there to send data up to my dear friend IoT Hub. In the meantime, what I'm going to do here is look at the device. Oh, come on. Hello, yes. And evolve demo, and I'm going to say, hey, monitor the events to see what's going on. The app is starting. Deploying. And we have 7 more minutes. I want to leave some time for Q&A at the end. That's why I'm going a bit fast. Hello. Any questions in the meantime? Well, it's actually thinking about it. OK. Too late. No questions. So now what I can do is start sending data. And you see, boom, in my, well, it's on an app on my PC. But basically, that app is monitoring the IoT Hub service, right? And so I see messages coming up into the cloud from the Xamarin application with 3 lines of code. A bit more code snippets. But you imagine like creating the device client instance, initializing it with the connection string, sending a message. And you've seen the receive message, which is one function as well. And I'm going to show you what happens if I have this device. Hello. From evolve, send, and here I should have that arriving, boom, hello evolve, because I had these nice debug write line in my code. I can do that in iOS. I don't think there's much interest, apart from showing the new iOS simulator showing on Windows. But basically, what I would like to do right now is give some time for some questions. Unless you don't have questions, and I show you another demo. OK, demos. Questions? No? Demos. You have not seen enough, and I understand that. So let me show you real quick another thing, which is called Connect the Dots. So we have that project that I created with some buddies of mine a year and a half ago that I'm actually working on updating to IoT Hub. And that project, so connect.IO, gives you a basic solution for you to start sending data to IoT Hub, which is not the IoT Suite. So basically, create your own IoT Hub service, website, a couple of other services very easily, so that it doesn't cost you too much, and you can actually start playing around and customize to build your own garage door opening. And what I have here as well is a small Arduino board that sends data over a serial connection. And I have a .NET application, still to be ported to Xamarin. I know I'm bad, but you guys can imagine that running on something else. It's actually the same code running on Mono on a Raspberry Pi, but I'm going to run it on my PC here, just for the sake of the demo once again. And this is this guy. I think I'm going to start as an admin. And what this little thing does, very simply, is sending data to IoT Hub for it to be displayed in a website. So connect.IO is the code. And if you look at the actual website, you will have this kind of thing, where basically in a couple of clicks you can deploy that. A couple of command lines, actually, you can deploy the website. And I have my monitor for my temperature and humidity. So if I blow on this guy, I will see it going up. And a matter of fact, if I'm not wrong, if it's working, I might be able to run that in there as well. So let me actually unlock this guy. Let me not care about this. And I have a Xamarin little application here that will allow me to connect to the same backend, same IoT Hub instance. And if it works, when it works, it will show the Droid application here and its data. And as I'm not very lucky, it's not showing. But that's on me. I'll fix that. So basically, you have the idea. Connect the dots makes it like super simple for you to have your dashboard for devices data to be shown, and then eventually you have some samples on how to do stream analytics or machine learning onto that data in order to do something, right? Whether show a dot on the screen here or do more. So these are very much the basics of doing IoT Hub development. You've seen like developing for a device to send data. I'd be curious to know, maybe after we can discuss if you have ideas, what do you need from the other side as well? As in, like, what do you need to do with a mobile application against a service like IoT Hub, which from the very tiny description I had time to give you, does a number of things related to the IoT solution. I want to leave it like we have 2 minutes something for questions. If you guys have questions, just fire. Yes?
What is the difference between the IoT Hub and the event hub that you already have?
Yeah. So the question is, what's different between IoT Hub and Event Hub? For this, we've been playing with Event Hub, which is another data ingestion service. So Event Hub is actually not allowing you to do a per-device authentication. You have one connection string or one policy that you distribute against various devices. So you basically have no way to really shut down one device or manage device per device, right? So that's one. The second one is Event Hub is unidirectional. You can only go one direction with Event Hub, as in a device sends data to Event Hub. If you want to receive notification or commands back from the cloud, you have to instantiate another client of another service, like notification hubs or something else, in order to get notifications. IoT Hub has that by default, right? So these are the two main things. The third thing is that Event Hubs only support AMQP and HTTP REST, while IoT Hub supports MQTT as well. And we're extending to other protocols in the near future. And one other thing we're adding to IoT Hub is device management and a gateway SDK that will allow you to actually have that gateway functionality. So IoT Hub, basically think of it as the real IoT gateway solution, while Event Hub is the path-through of data, which could be fine enough in a lot of solutions. You can go for the cheap Event Hub and say, I just want to have data ingested, and I'm going to deal with the device ID and whatever myself in the payload of the messages. Or you can go IoT Hub, which is a bit more advanced, but gives you more functionality. And in terms of cost, it's a bit more expensive, but I'm sure it's going to drag down based on the competition that we have with AWS and others. There was another question about, yes? Yeah, to the question, let me repeat for the audience. Does IoT Hub support today the addition of metadata and basically device state or device shadow equivalent that they have on Amazon? The short answer is not yet. So today, what we have in IoT Hub is raw messaging, but we just announced the arrival of device management, which will have these notions of metadata and so forth on top of LWM2M, which is a device management standard that we're supporting in that implementation of device management for IoT Hub. So you'll be able to do the device state thing and so forth using the device management features that are added to IoT Hub as we speak today. Another question? Yes? So say it again, sorry. The difference between web shops and scheduler. Differences between web, definitely not. Difference between web jobs and scheduler or other things. I'm not super familiar. Web jobs, think of it as an application running in the cloud, right? So you basically code it the way you want, and it actually acts as an app in the cloud, and it could have a UI or not that is seen through a website, or it could just be like plainly contained in its own. Think of it as we provide the infrastructure for doing your own containers, if you want. We do have container support as well. We have a new service called Functions that actually allows you to abstract all the notion of deployment and so on. So you can write some code Node or C# in the browser and trigger that code based on various types of triggers, whether it's a change in a storage or an IoT Hub, just send data or things like that, and can just execute simple pieces of code. You have various options out there. Web jobs is one that we're using here. We could definitely replace that with a function, and you could replace that with VM running, Linux VM running on Azure to do exactly the same thing. So it definitely depends on how you're going to scale, how you're going to deploy, what kind of platform service you want to use, what you have today. Web jobs, I think today they support C#, Java, Node, Python. So it can also be a factor for you to choose one or another. You have more options than you can really grasp. So I don't think there's a real use that for that kind of situation, kind of guidance. It's a lot about what do you have today, what is your culture, how do you want to scale, and so forth. So the fact that we have web jobs in the IoT pre-configured solutions, it's just a matter of when we did the architecture, that was the most logical. Today that functions are out, we might be replacing these web jobs with functions, but so we'll see. Okay, other questions? Otherwise, I think we're good. Thank you very much, and I'll be around.